With this. You know, it's awkward, so I was like, okay.
Good evening. I will call this regular meeting of the USD253 Board of Education to order. We have 7 board members present this evening. That takes us straight into item 1B, election of board president for 2023-2024. According to my notes here from Casey, Jamie is the only one who's expressed an interest in serving as president for 2023-2024. So, would anyone like to nominate Jamie?
I will make a motion that Jamie Reaver serve in the role as board president and ask for a second.
Second.
Thank you. Is that okay, Jamie? Casey? Okay. Well, there was a, yeah. Yeah,
Yes,
you don't
I'll
really get a
I'll
choice,
accept
sorry.
that.
Okay, well then I will take, yeah, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Now you get to do vice president.
Well, thank you. And before I move on, I do want to thank you, Leslie and Grant, for your leadership and just your steady guidance of the board over the past year. And of course, before that, but especially in your leadership roles. So thank you. Item 1C is the nomination, the election for board vice president for 2023-2024. And according to my notes, Lillian Lingenfelter has expressed an interest in serving as our vice president for 2023-2024. Do I have a nomination?
I would nominate Lillian Lingenfelter for board vice president for the 2023-24 school year.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Motion passes 7-0. Item 2A is the adoption of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Motion passes 7-0. Item 3A is public comments. Public comments will be allowed with a duration of 3 minutes per speaker to be timed by the board clerk, and speakers must sign up in person for in-person public comment by 1 p.m. the day of the board meeting. That public comment or by email or remote not be accepted, that those giving public comment not approach the board or move past the podium, and no handouts will be allowed, but such materials may be emailed in advance to the board clerk for distribution to the board, and the public comment may not include reference to names of specific students and or personnel matters which could potentially violate an individual's privacy, and that the board will not engage in discussion at that time except to gain clarification. Casey, do we have any public comments this evening?
We do not.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4, the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered by the Board of Education to be routine business items. Approval of the items may be made by a single motion, second, and a majority vote with no separate discussion of any item listed. Should a member of the board desire to discuss any item at his or her request, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. What are the wishes of the board?
Madam President, I move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item 6A is construction update from McCall Gordon.
Eric Holtze is here from McCown Gordon on his regular schedule again.
Yeah. Good evening. Thank you for that. Sorry, that seemed really loud. So it was about 2 weeks ago that I gave the last presentation. So some things have changed, pictures that I've updated. I updated the timeline. Casey, if you could go to the next slide. Really, the 3 or 4 schools that we're currently working in, middle school, Village Elementary, Riverside, and Timmerman Elementary Schools, those are all tracking very nicely. And then we had talked on William Allen White, and the goal would be hopefully be able to start something Q1 of 2024. So HGK is still moving forward on schematic design. So as soon as we get that information, we're going to look at that, put an estimate together. We'll share that with the Build for Future Executive Committee. We'll get some feedback from trades as well to kind of tell us what the market's doing, and we'll share that information. Hopefully see something sometime here the month of July, so we can have that meeting first part of August with the Build for Future Executive Committee. So any questions as far as timeline goes before I get into any of the progress on the schools? No? Okay. So Emporia Middle School, actually things have changed quite a bit since we walked through 2 weeks ago. So we've actually, in these pictures, that upper left-hand corner is just some finished tile work where drinking fountains would be installed, and they've actually been installed. And then they finished placing all of the paving for that new parking area out front. Striping's been done. Got some cleanup to do there. We've still got some larger deliveries to get in for the gymnasium when we start the flooring in there as well as the bleachers. But really, we've started spreading topsoil around the outside. So if you've driven by there, you'll notice that going on. We've got light poles that are placed around that parking area. So we need to get those installed, but they're ready to be erected. Some of the sight railings have been installed. We're continuing with the fire alarm replacement in all of the original school, as well as the HVAC control upgrades. So a lot of work going on there. And then in Area C, the new life skills, intensive skills areas, the drywall is actually, the install has been complete. So they've started finishing this week. Hopefully by about the end of next week, they'll be done. And as soon as all the finishing is done, we'll prime and first coat, and then ceiling grid will start in there. The HVAC unit that we talked about for the gymnasium last week, it is going to be started up tomorrow. So we'll begin conditioning that space, and then probably about a week to 10 days after that, we will begin bringing in the subfloor for that gym, start installing that, and then probably in 2 to 3 weeks, we'll bring in the maple floor, let it acclimate for a couple of weeks before they begin to install there. So really coming down to the end there at the middle school as well. On Village Elementary, so the picture on the left there is actually in the existing, what I'll call kind of multi-purpose cafeteria area where the kids eat lunch. So if you remember, we cut 2 doors in there for emergency egress per the fire marshal during construction. And at the end of the day, those doors were taken out, and we put 2 new nice storefront systems in there to allow all that natural light in there. Really changes the feel of that space and just opens it up more. That middle picture is in the kitchen, just showing some of the ductwork that's being installed. And actually in that kitchen area, the kitchen hood is complete. The grease duct is finished up. They're working on fire wrapping that grease duct. Hopefully it'll be complete by the end of the week, and then we'll be able to finish the ceiling in there. The epoxy flooring is done in the kitchen area. And so actually today when I was there, they were working on forming up that additional concrete parking that used to be gravel there to the west. And then we're tying in that new drive that'll kick you back to the north to help alleviate that traffic congestion during pickup and drop off. So really coming down the wire. And then that photo on the right, apologize I didn't touch on it, is the trash enclosure. So those are just the new gates being installed and on that structure there. And then at Riverside and Timmerman, so these are just a couple of photos of the drywall being finished, and actually prime and first coat is complete in there. Ceiling tile or ceiling grid is actually started as well in there. So the casework has shown up. It's staged right now outside in the hallways. So as soon as we get ceiling grid done, get our light fixtures installed, diffusers, registers, and grills installed for in the ceiling grid, we'll get an inspection, drop ceiling tile, and then we will begin the casework install. We've got some, what we hope is good news, some doors potentially moved up, so we may not have to do temporary doors for those classrooms. They may show up by the end of July, and we'll be able to get those installed before school starts. So the slab on grade at Riverside for the new addition was placed last week as well. And then today or yesterday started digging footings at Timmerman for that addition. So ran into a little bit of soil. I'll call it poor soil in a little portion of that footprint. So working with the geotech engineer to understand what direction we need to do, whether it's over excavate and add some additional larger size rock, things to that nature. So we're supposed to have that answer tomorrow, and we'll keep moving along on that. And but yeah, as soon, let's see, and then masonry at Riverside on the new addition will start here probably in another week or so. So yeah, those two are going to be coming along rather quickly as well. So, and then kind of touched on William Allen White. HGK is still working through all those questions that Tell and his staff had, and pulling all those thoughts and ideas together to get that plan finalized. And we'll begin putting an estimate to that and continue to work through that. So any questions, concerns that you all have?
I had questions about the floor, but you answered most of them. Do they think the floor will be ready by the first day of school in the gymnasium at the middle school?
No. So,
Okay.
So yeah,
Because I know there was like 3
Yes,
weeks to
great,
acclimate,
yeah.
and then
Great question. So right now at the middle school, the two areas really that will not be turned over will be the gymnasium and then the intensive skills and life skills area. So those are the two areas that we're always shown to finish a little bit later just because of lead times. And, we needed to get the new admin area built before we could move Mr. Martin and his staff out of that current area where the new life skills, intensive skills are going. But yeah, science wing will be ready. The area F Commons will be ready. The admin, actually, I was there today, and I think the majority of the furniture has been installed too, compared to when we walked 2 weeks ago. So it's really coming together over there as well. Any other questions?
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is 6B, request for extension for Emporia Chamber of Commerce for the sale of Maynard. Carter?
So we do have Janine McKenna, president of the chamber, to provide some other information regarding the request to extend the contract for the closing date. We also have Erica Martin, who's been the grant writer for the Child Care Coalition, Matt Johnson, realtor for the chamber, and then also Mark Lanes, who's a realtor representing Caldwell Banker, who represents the school district. So Janine, if you could share, give an overview and.
Would be happy to give you an update. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to see everybody here tonight. There's been a lot of things happening over the past several months. We did, after our last meeting, we did put in our application for the accelerator grant, was the main one where we needed an option on the building in order to move forward. As you know, unfortunately, we did not receive that grant. But I still feel good. Most of those who were awarded, well, first off, there was nearly 3 times the asks for what dollars were available, which shows how competitive the grant process is and the need for capacity of childcare, not only in Emporia or the state of Kansas, that this is truly a national issue. They feel very confident there will be more funds. They've applied for I think it is another 40 million through the U.S. Treasury. They feel very confident that they will receive in order for us to move forward. We still have another grant out there that when we applied said we should hear before we would have heard from the accelerator grant through DCF. And they have not made those announcements. They have not given us a date, hence why we are here. And that actual grant, and Erica can talk more on it and answer specific questions because she's the one who who put the hard work into it and in writing it, is for the actual purchase and renovations. So that we feel is important if we would receive that grant. I will tell you, we've had board meetings where we've had these discussions. The coalition has met, the investors of Ignite Emporia, who are the ones with this initiative and moving forward, have all met. Comments have been, we're stepping up where no one else has to take a look at expanding capacity in our community. And I don't want to say no one else has stepped up, but we're trying to take some bold steps in moving forward to increase capacity here in our community. And we want to continue to move forward. So I have been given directive from our investors and from our board of directors that if we do receive this DCF grant, we move forward. We purchase the building, and we believe we would have the funds to finish it, to open it up to full capacity. But if not, let's move forward. And maybe instead of the 9 rooms opening up, it's 4. But we move forward, and then we continue on. If another accelerator grant comes forward, then we apply for it. That is the one thing we found. Most of them that were awarded are 6 months to a year ahead of us. They do already have a facility. They have started making some of those renovations to that. And so hopefully that would put us in a position to be successful in that next round. So we're determined. The coalition, I have to say, for the coalition members, they're volunteering of their time. Erica, along with the others, are volunteering to meet to discuss. Erica has put the time and work and effort into these grants and into the writing and using her skills and expertise. She has brought in her father, who is an architect, who has donated his time for our drawings and things that we have needed for this grant. And so there's a lot of love, a lot of dedication to help us move forward. So we're not down and out. We're excited, feeling good about moving forward. At the same breath, we can't say, we don't know. But we do need that extension for a minimum of 30 days. We're hoping that, I was hoping before tonight we would have heard something, but we just have not, and we haven't heard of any dates. So that's where we stand on that. And I don't know if Eric has any updates or any other things that she would like to add missed with that, so I'll turn it over to her.
I mean, the only addition I would say is we expected the DCF, which would be for the renovation of this building, right? That's like the big one. Their original announcement date was May 26th. May 24th, they sent out an announcement that said it's not going to be May 26th. And that is literally the only update we've had. So they're behind. I can appreciate that perhaps the work of reviewing things like this was maybe more substantial than they had anticipated. It is, if you have been teachers or reviewers, you can probably appreciate going through 20-page proposals, single spaced with all of that stuff is probably a lot of work. So that's all we know, and we have not heard anything else since then. I'm hoping May 26th was kind of a while ago. So that soon would be great to hear one way or the other, but we have not heard anything yet. Although I am, like Janine mentioned, I'm still very optimistic because this would be the big one, right? This is the one that we really need in order for us to proceed. We just don't have an answer yet.
The only other information I would like to add is that, and Mark Lades has provided information to go one way or the other, extension or canceling the contract. The other thing to take into consideration is that Senate Bill 113, and that's in the supporting information. So if we were able to continue that contract because we have the contract before July 1st, if the contract is canceled, then it would follow the steps, and I just put that in part below in supporting. So it would go back to the legislature or go to the legislature for the first right of refusal. So we would go through that process before being able to offer it up for sale again. And then I know that Mark has had some other people looking at that, and I don't know, Mark, if you want to give an update for that too, please.
I would just say that, yeah, we continue to have some interest in the building. We get a call or two a week, probably. We have shown it again this week. That is the only showing since we went under contract. But most of the people that are calling when they find it out that it's under contract are just inquiring and getting further details and asking us to let them know if it does become available again. But again, local interest, non-local interest, both continue to call on the property. So there are options out there if you determine to look at something else. But the extension or the cancellation, the contract does expire here on Friday. Our initial one goes through Friday, so we just need to have something to file, by Friday to move forward. But happy to answer any questions when you have them.
Great. Thank you. What questions do we have?
So, just to kind of reiterate, I think what the superintendent was saying is if we cancel the contract, there's this new clause that means the legislature gets the first right to say, hey, we're going to take this building from you and do other things. And not trying to pick a fight with the Kansas legislature. I'd like to have a little bit more control over what that building becomes and how it contributes to the community before giving people who don't live in Emporia and Lyon County first say on what to do with that space. My inclination is to grant the extension. However, I would actually give 60 days, not 30 days, because I don't want to put them in a position where they have to come back and say, hey, this grant giving person is probably a fancier way to say that is taking too long again. Now we need another 30 days. I'd rather just say, let's extend this until the first school board meeting in September. And then if we have to come back and take more action at that time, we'll have a meeting and then we'll be here and we'll be able to hear it. I think we've all said this in some capacity. Janine spoke about earlier, the crisis that is childcare and the lack of childcare. When I worked legal aid at KLS, I cannot tell you how many times I'd have clients, primarily low-income people, oftentimes single parents, mothers, who would say there is literally no point in working 40-plus hours a week because everything is being paid into childcare. Or they couldn't work because there was no one available, and so they didn't have the opportunity to generate a second income with their spouse, husband, wife, or partner, or whatever. I'd like to see this building open up and have lots of kids in there and be staffed with folks and to kind of be a release valve for our community. So my thought process, deferring to all of you for discussion, is that we should grant the extension and we should do it for 60 days.
As you were speaking, Jeremy, and I appreciate that, I have not told you, when we applied for the accelerator grant with matching funds, and out of the 169 approximate spot, we had over half of those guaranteed through our community within businesses saying, if this happens, I will take 10 of those spots. I will take 60 of those spots. I will take 20. So we had over half of those already saying, we'll take those spots if this moves forward, showing, kind of confirming what you were saying.
Yeah, massive community interest. A lot of people crossing their fingers for this to work.
Sorry. I have a clarifying question for Erica. The accelerator grant was not meant to buy the building. It's this next grant that is to purchase the building.
So the accelerator grant primarily was to fund future staffing of the building. So I think 90% of our ask for the accelerator was to pay for a director and teachers and custodial staff and things like that. We did ask for some other funds for the building. However, the bulk of renovation costs, architecture, all of those things comes from the DCF, the one that we have not heard from yet.
Thank you.
Do we know if this goes to the legislature, they could just take the building from us, or would they have to pay for it?
It would go to them for them to decide, and there hasn't been any buildings yet. So there will be other school districts that will have buildings. That'd be an advantage of waiting to see what other, rather than be the guinea pig.
In other words, we haven't seen that process actually effectuate with this Senate bill and this provision.
But the state wouldn't have to take the building. They could say they didn't want it, right?
One more clarifying question. If we do this motion, is it 60 days from today or from the 14th? since the 14th is what it says was the anticipated closing date.
Well, I was looking ahead to at the 14th, because if we could do it, the 14th would be after the first meeting in September,
Right.
which would allow the board meeting to happen, and then other factors that played in.
Okay. So
Yes, yes.
A normal real estate extension would start at the effective cancellation date.
The
So
four- from the
that would be normal. I mean, if you have something different to match with a board meeting, we could look at that too. But a normal extension starts the day it cancels.
okay. So does anybody have any?
I'll just say I would hate to bail at this point. I'd really like to see how the dominoes fall and what we can do before we walk away, because who knows if
The
the
60
legislature will
days
want it.
from-
They just have right
or-
of first
Yeah,
refusal.
is that right? Yeah. that's right.
But I'd
That's
love
what it
to
says.
not end up, I don't want to be the guinea pigs. I'd love to see this work out for many, many reasons, obviously.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to extend the contract closing date for 60 days, which 60 days from today is Tuesday, I Googled, is Tuesday, September 12th, 2023.
Sorry to interrupt.
ahead.
You wanted it to be September 14th? What's the board meeting date?
If we
So
could,
we
if
wanted
we
to
could
go
have it
beyond
the 14th,
60?
yes, if it could, I mean, it would, if you're correct.
Let's do 60 days from August 14th. I mean, 60 days from the 14th of
But
July.
I think
July.
that's what Jen did,
Yeah,
right?
I
Yeah, so
Googled-
I think there's, so
Okay.
that would just, if we could,
But we want to,
it's the will of the board. It seems to make sense to have the board meeting on that September, and then it should be the September 13th. And then if the closing
would be
date
the next
would be
day.
the 14th, it'd be great.
Okay, so change that to the 14th. I'm going to start over. I move to extend the contract closing date, should we say 60? Okay, closing date to September 14th, 2023, as requested from the Emporia Area Chamber Foundation.
I will second that motion. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Very much. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank
Thank you. Okay, we move on to item 6C, to consider approval of the tentative agreement and negotiated agreement for licensed professionals, administrator salary schedule, classified exempt salary schedule, and superintendent compensation for the 2023-2024 school year.
We have Mrs. Pam Stranathan, Interim Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations, to present this agenda item.
Thank you.
Welcome,
And
Pam.
I'm not David McGee, but I am presenting his materials, and I gave him a hard time because he had left a package for me. And I told him, I said, okay, you've got to write a little bit better for me to be able to read this. And so we've gone back and forth a few times, but I did pull up some history because with just my prior experience, this is pretty incredible that this was settled before contracts went out. So, congratulations to everybody that was involved in settling this. I cannot take credit for this, but it's very impressive. So for you all, it was June of 2019, the last time it was settled prior to contracts in the start of the school year. So pretty impressive that the teachers and staff came together to finish this out. I'm going to read the notes, which you also have on there, just to recap that. And also if there's anybody that's watching or listening, can review that. So the IBB team tentatively approved a total compensation package that includes horizontal and vertical movement for the 2023-2024 and a $1,000 base salary increase on the certified salary schedule, a $30 per month increase to the health insurance fringe, continuation of one-year stipends to ensure that no certified staff member at the bottom of the certified scale loses money, recommended changes to the supplemental schedule, and continuation of the $15,000 pool for scholarships to aid staff in getting qualified to teach the dual credit courses and special education. Also, administrator salary schedule, classified exempt salary schedule, and superintendent compensation will be increased by 2.4%, equivalent to the base increase on the certified salary schedule. Supporting documentation has been attached. And note that the $30 per month increase to the health insurance fringe, district contribution applies to all staff groups. So I know there were several items that were attached and we had to correct a couple of them. But if there's any questions, I would take those. I'm going to have to defer probably to others that are sitting out here. So any questions?
What questions do we have?
I just want to echo how proud I am of everyone. Like Pam said, it was really great. We set a goal to have that done before contracts were signed, and we did it. Everyone worked really hard. We had a lot of meetings, but all the discussions were productive and collaborative and good, and it was just a good thing to be part of this year.
I would agree. I'm the alternate for IBB, and I thought it was a really good process from the start. And I also really want to give Dr. Harder credit that I think that she deserves, because you said from, very early on that you wanted to get our contract settled before the start of the school year, and we're making that happen. So I know
Thank you.
that's been huge for our teachers.
I appreciate that. Well, and the IBB team also, so we finished the contract for this year and then turned right around and
That is part of this process. What questions?
I can go first. Okay, so it seems like I always have questions about insurance, and maybe I'm just struggling to understand. So we are adding $30 to the health insurance fringe, but do we have an idea of how it's going to make?
So I know as right now, we have not got that back from them yet as to what that's going to look like. I know at one time it was going to be, the discussion was that the increase was going to be about 20%, and we have not heard anything else back. So my goal for next week, since I just officially started this week, was to start reaching out and going, okay, where are we at with that? We need to have that information, especially going in as we're starting to set the budget for next year. Or for this year, so coming up. So
Lillian, I would assume, I can't remember what that bare minimum that you have to contribute is called. Does anyone remember? Safe harbor. That's what I was going to call it, but then there's something in banking, so I was confusing myself. I would assume that if the increase is large enough that the 30 doesn't meet the safe harbor, obviously we're going to have to increase that beyond to meet safe harbor, and then consider as a board if we want to contribute even more to make it affordable.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
I
where-
think
that's
we
where I was
negotiated
going.
30, but I don't think that's like, well, that's it. Sorry.
Yeah,
Like, I
and
don't think
kind of
that's the
where
case.
I was getting to is that if we've come to find out in 2 weeks that insurance is going to be way different than what we thought it was going to be, and we need to come back and renegotiate. And I mean, I've said this like a million times. I think that we need to fully cover an employee only package, even at like the third option. And I would like to see that. I know I'm not on like insurance or IBB, but that's something that is important to me. I'm just kind of worried about the insurance front. So
If my memory serves from the insurance committee meetings, we do anticipate somewhat of a slight increase, crossing my fingers that it's not a giant jump, but it is going to be a little bit more. But if I'm understanding everything right, we can approve this now, and then if we needed to, we could adjust dependent upon, if insurance really hammers us.
And once we have that information from Brown & Brown, then we'll start having insurance committee meetings and we'll be talking about all of that.
So really what I'm hearing is that we have the negotiated agreement where the teachers, they won't pay more than $11 a month. Is that, I think we landed on $11. So we will have to make up the difference if it's more than $30
correct.
a month. I would also echo what Lillian said. I would love for us to get to a place where we can, as we talk about retention and recruitment, to be at a place where we can pay 100% of an individual's health insurance. I would love for that to be a goal going forward.
and I think the rest of this I'm fine with. I just don't want to see us approve this and then have to come right back to it and renegotiate here shortly. I mean, I just had my contract approved earlier this week. So from a teaching perspective, I understand wanting to have your contract before school starts and totally understand what you're signing. I love that. I think that we should do that for our staff. I just don't know if it's like, should we wait? Should we not wait? Should we approve it and then have to come back and redo it? Because if it doesn't make to safe harbor, whatever it's called, we're going to have to come back anyway. And for me, it's really important that we can cover that employee only insurance.
There's a lot of dominoes. And so it's been very important for teachers, just like you said, to sign the contract. And that was something we heard over and over, which was why that became a high priority. So we know that, and they've been keeping us in, them being Brown and Brown, looking at not having more than 20% of an increase, but then also watching what we have for our staff. So this could be approved, and the teachers have voted to ratify that. So that's really important. So they have given their input on that. And then we can come back and talk about adding more to insurance because everyone's committed to that.
I'd also point
sorry.
out, sorry, Pam,
No,
didn't mean to
you're
interrupt you.
fine.
I'd also point out that I think we want to make sure that the insurance committee has the time to meet too and have the input, so that we're respecting and honoring those people's commitment and getting that information fed to the board and then being able to make a decision based off of that. So I can see how we kind of seems backward, right? We're going to pass the contract now and then we're going to figure out the other part later and stuff, but that is the nature of business. We don't get those quotes until later. So I think we should probably pass this now, revisit it later as necessary, and then when we get final numbers from Brown and Brown, really let the insurance committee get together, meet, and do their process on that, and then follow back up. And Pam, I interrupted you. What were you going
No,
to say?
you are fine. I was just going to share that the insurance, if we don't do something with it now, then we'll have to continue with the salary schedule that they're on going into this next school year, and then have to look at doing retro pay once it's approved. So that would be one reason too to go ahead and move forward with that, to get that approved. And then I always say it's easier to add on than it is to try to go back and backfill a lot of times especially payroll. The other thing too is even when Brown and Brown comes back with this, whatever their number is going to be, I will go in and challenge that with them. It will not just be, oh, okay, we'll take that number. We'll go back and have some conversations. And like I said, my experience before is that a lot of times when you push back a little bit, you start peeling that out a little bit and that number will come down. I'm not saying it'll come down a lot. I just haven't had the extensive experience with Brown and Brown, but we'll look at that and to move forward. The other thing, one of the goals that I have also in the role is to look with the insurance committee at all the options and to, start looking at that to see if there's some things we can do with some of the programs that we have to try to help with that.
So what Pam is saying is she's ready to haggle.
Yeah.
And Brown and Brown are great partners.
Yes.
They have done great. That's their job as brokers. They want to keep us as clients, and so they're very willing to haggle. And so having another
Yep.
partner in there too with Pam will be amazing.
Yeah. I'd like them to get it down to about 5.
It looks like last year they came in at our second August meeting. Are we expecting Brown and Brown to be back here in 6 weeks?
Yeah, I would hope. Like I said, I have not had direct contact. It was a couple of weeks ago. I have not had contact with them again, but that is on my list that we need to get them.
So they were planning on giving us rates around July 31st. So at the end of July, so then we can start that and then bring that to the board and then those next steps. Yep, absolutely.
And I'm sure we've all, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
One thing that I was really happy to see in the negotiated agreement is our new parental leave policy. And I think to be able to say that, providing supports to family through childcare and also to now offer parental leave is not something that a lot of districts do. And so we should be really proud that the IBB was able to work through that and get that to our employees as well.
And specifically you. because you were on that committee. So,
Well,
I mean,
I'm not
good
seeking-
job.
I'm not seeking
And
credit,
Jared, and
but
yes, lots of others.
It
but
was
yes.
it was
Yeah.
a huge commitment
So,
that we've been
yeah.
talking about for a couple of years now, and I'm glad it can finally happen.
Alrighty, I think we understand where we are with insurance down the road, but I would like to make a motion to approve the negotiated agreement and tentative agreement for licensed professionals, administrator salary schedule, classified exempt salary schedule, and superintendent contract for 2023, 2024, and a $30 per month increase to health insurance fringe for all staff as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We will move on to item 6D, subsidizing costs for reduced meals.
Okay, well, rather than tossing this to Pam at our first meeting, I'm going to present most of this information. So this question came up at the previous board meeting and talking about what would happen to subsidize reduced meal costs. So there was, I guess it was 2 meetings ago, sorry. So there's just been more information gathered. So if we could go to the second slide. Just to show that automatic direct certification has caused our at-risk numbers to increase significantly. And so something just to keep in mind is that our student population, as we know, has decreased slightly. So there's a little bit of movement there too, so keeping that in mind. And then looking at this third slide. So David Carlson, our new director for food service, pulled these numbers, and Dr. David McGee, he was also working with him. So pulling this information. So if we looked at actual costs for reduced meals, for last year, so those are the meals, breakfast and lunch, that were actually eaten. So subsidizing for last year would have been $28,850. If we looked at the potential costs, so just to make sure that the board has all the information, that would have, if all students who qualified for reduced meals, if they ate both breakfast and lunch, then that cost would be $67,000 for breakfast and lunch. So additional information is that looking at the whole picture, so according to Kelly Cheney, Assistant Director of KSDE Child and Nutrition, the cost of subsidizing the student reduced meal prices is an allowable cost for nonprofit school food service fund. That was one of the questions that came up, is if that is a possibility. One of the things that Dr. McGee, he wanted to make sure that the board took into consideration as well is that, especially as we're getting ready to go through the budget and we talked about our needs assessments, just how to consider how this expense fits into the total development of the budget, and that regular budget process takes several weeks to go through various steps and regulations. So he was just cautioning, making sure to look at the whole picture. So I did send out just a query and I asked for 5 and 6A districts. I did have more districts that responded. So I had some smaller districts who responded. There were 10 in all. And so there was one district that indicated that they subsidized reduced meals. 9 out of those 10 districts charged meals at enrollment, but understanding that all the districts that for families who met the requirements for reduced lunches also had reduced enrollment fees. So they reduced everything. So that is the information that we have. What questions do you have? And I hope I am going to be able to answer them.
Great, thank you.
Something I would be interested to know, and I don't want to push this off. I mean, we kind of just got here pretty fast, which there's nothing wrong with that, is of the reduced fees, of those who are paying, who should be paying reduced fees, how many are actually being paid?
So I do have that
Okay,
information.
good. I thought
Thank you.
you
I
know,
did have
sometimes you
that.
can't remember who you talked to.
Yes.
And I can't remember if I said that to you or not.
So students who are paying full price, so we had in total $13,943.55 unpaid debt last year. Students who qualified for or at least didn't fill out the reduced. I mean, we really encourage them to fill all parents, and that's very confidential. But that was $10,192. So full pay that were not paying their fees.
And to clarify, the $13,000 that's unpaid, that is a running total. That's not last year.
Correct.
That's just whatever's accumulated over years and years and years, right?
Well, we try to rectify that at the end of every year so we don't carry that over, but there might
Right.
be some carryover.
Okay.
And I don't have that. I can bring that back. So I would rather than just say, I think, I can bring back details.
Just to clarify on the statement there, 9 out of those 10 districts charge fees that are only, there we're talking about book fees and is that the kind of fees we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I understood it. But I also think that sometimes people forget that a few years ago, we did away with that. And there's many districts, 9 out of 10 of the example ones here that are still doing that. So that's a good thing. I think that's a great feather in our cap and also helps all families.
And also technology fee is a flat 10 rather than alternating or altering what it is depending on full pay or reduced. That's been reduced, and $10 is a very, we try to make that very affordable for sure. And if parents can't pay for that, we work with them.
So I think, Art, go ahead if you have a question.
I'm just sitting here thinking that we did our needs assessment this afternoon, or we started that process, and I don't feel like we do have all the clear picture, because in my mind, I really want to focus on increasing student achievement. And while I think this is a worthy cause, I'd like to be able to look at all our options side by side. And if this is what we want to do as a board, that's great. But I also want to see what other options come through from the needs assessment that we might consider. There was so much on the needs assessment about additional staff. And so, again, I feel like making this decision tonight is a little early. But I'm not against this idea. I just would like to see what our other options are too, because we do have limited funds.
I think to Art's point about everything in the needs assessment and the information we've been looking at regarding student achievement actually really drives the need for this home for me when I think about students in our community or students in my own classroom. Hunger is definitely a barrier to excelling in your classes. And for me, it's a barrier that we have a lot of control over. Earlier today at our retreat, Leslie was talking about how sometimes our students experience circumstances that are far out of our control. We cannot control everything that happens in a student's home. But food, at least food at school, is something that we have a lot of control over. And it's something that research shows affects both student achievement in academically, but also student behavior. And those are things that I know all of us care about. And those are things that we've spent the last 5 hours discussing in our retreat. I definitely think that the wise thing to do is let's look over the budget for the next year. But I definitely want to see us find room in the budget for this, because I think it's so important to helping our students, at least give them another boost to help them get through the day.
And I do want to add that, and Jamie and I had talked about that too. So just to make sure that everybody understands that we do provide. So there is no student that goes hungry. So if they come in late, we try to provide them the full breakfast that they have. We also have snacks. Teachers are great about having snacks. We have food bags. The Gazette does a great job of having space available. We have our transitions program that delivers those bags for weekends, for holidays. And so committing also with food service and serving through the summer, 1,080 meals a day. I mean, that's a ton of meals that are served. And so absolutely, we take that very serious, and because we do see that as a barrier. One of the first questions that we ask is have you eaten breakfast? Are you hungry? Because you're absolutely right. That does contribute to behavior, and then also it contributes to positive achievement.
So, what's that? No, I'm just talking. Yeah, I'm just talking still. My voice on this is that I don't want anyone to infer that, I feel like we're not doing enough for kids. I think we do a lot for kids, but as Lillian says, food is kind of one thing that we can control. And yes, every student will be fed something if they don't have a meal, but I guarantee you, having worked, legal aid, I can go back to like that 6.5 years. There are kids somewhere every morning in this community who are counting change when they leave the house to make sure that they have enough money to make food happen when they get to school. The total amount that this would have cost for us to subsidize, to just cover the 30-40 cent price for breakfast and lunch for the actual costs for the 2022-2023 year is $28,850. And I get that it's taxpayer money. We are the stewards of that money. We have a responsibility to it. But with respect to what we normally spend in a meeting, that's really kind of small fries. And I think it makes a phenomenal, important difference in the day-to-day life of a child who knows that they're going to have food, who's not facing anxiety about not having enough money, who's not doing the change scavenger hunt before they leave in the morning and then making sure they have it the next day. This just seems kind of, to me, like a very simple way to improve the quality of life of our students, to make sure they have what they need, and to let them have a foundation that literally starts in the morning with a full stomach of food so that they can be successful and maximize their school day. And I think that trickles up to your teachers and the experience that they have, not having hungry students who may be younger, dysregulated. Now it's setting off their behaviors. I mean, $28,850 is kind of a drop in the bucket for us. I get that if this was maximized and every student, didn't bring lunch from home that day, that it could be $67,000. But I'd like to see us do this at least for one school year as kind of a trial. Look at it, see how it works, the real cost doing there. I want to hire more people and more counselors, but I also want to take care of the most basic needs that we have control over, because it's literally the building block of your day. Did you eat food? Did you have a good meal? Did you have to face the anxiety of finding change to pay for your meal? If we can eliminate that barrier, I think it's a good thing. I'd like to see it happen. That's what I have to say for now.
What other questions, comments do we have?
Art, you mentioned in the needs assessment, it said to hire more people. But we already budget for that. We already have, and so when I saw that today in the needs assessment too, I thought about that. Yes, we need to hire more people, but we already have all those positions budgeted for. So that doesn't worry me as much as trying to find the money for this, because we know we have the money to hire the people. We just don't have the people. When I was thinking about that earlier today.
And I think Lillian's point really resonates with me, because not too long ago I was reading an article about chronic absenteeism, and I saw what our absenteeism rate is, and it's above the state average. And so, some of the suggestions were like, what are all the things that you as a district can do to make, to help kids want to come to school? And it could be that a kid doesn't want to come to school because they might not be able to afford to buy lunch, and so they don't want to be the kid who maybe gets, who feels like shame that they can't get lunch, or come to school knowing that they can't get breakfast. And even though we have the share box and we have snacks, it's still hard for kids emotionally to sort of have that acceptance of what they can and can't eat during the school day. So I'm like Jeremy. I think if we piloted this for a year, and we could actually then see the true cost and then assess it again after that. But anything that we can help kids to be successful, I think we should make happen.
I'm on board with what Art is saying. I don't think any of us are against it. I think it's more of a kind of, I personally would rather wait and, see at a future meeting, kind of looking at this compared to some other things. So I would look at more wanting to table it to a future meeting.
Would it be possible to table it for a meeting in August, so that we could still have time to do our due diligence, but could reinstate it still around the time that school starts?
I'm actually going to go ahead and take the plunge and make the motion, because I don't want to wait. I think that this is something that we have control over and we can make a positive impact. I mean, if we're looking at the actual cost for the last cycle, a teacher's salary, starting salary, base salary here is about $42,000. So we're talking about less than the entire salary of one teacher to feed students. So I'm going to go ahead and make the motion to subsidize all costs for students who qualify for reduced meals during the 2023-2024 school year, so that we would have the opportunity to review how this pilots and then make a determination next time around. And I'd ask for a second.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 4-3.
Thank you. We will go on to A, board reports. And it looks like we should have a board report from the Flint Hills Technical College Board of Trustees.
Yes, we had our board retreat on Monday. Went through, Luke Soba from KASB presented a very similar training that all of us received when we joined the board. So that took a couple hours, and then just a regular meeting. It was productive and nothing too groundbreaking to report.
Okay, and then I am here to give a report for the Emporia Recreation Commission, which is like my favorite thing ever. I'm so proud of the people that work there. We should be in the process, if not having already completed it, of updating the fitness room flooring. Believe it or not, this was an issue. There were like bumps, and X marks the spot to tell the patrons not to walk and trip over there. So never thought I would get excited about flooring, but that's what happens when you get elected to office. You start doing things like HVAC units and ceilings and flooring. We have a future funding task force that is hard at work looking at the ways that we can raise the resources between the city, the rec commission, the school, all of our community partners to be able to renovate or purchase a new rec center building. I've kind of talked now, I think, for years about how I want a new building someday to serve our community because our community has outgrown that building. Other neat thing, I talked to you guys a couple meetings ago about how we're having like a Gulf Zone simulator put in. Well, we approved the bidder, the only bidder for installing the Gulf Zone simulator. And so I don't think that's probably done yet, but some point here soon, we should have that Gulf Zone simulator set up, which I think will be really cool for the community and a lot of the kids and some ESU students as well. And there's going to be leadership elections at the next Emporia Rec Center meeting. I'm currently the vice president. I don't know what's going to happen with that. I may come back president. I really don't know. So we'll see what occurs.
Great, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is 7B, appointments for 2023-2024. Each July, the board is asked to make annual appointments for various positions, including the board clerk, treasurer, school attorney, truancy officers. The board will be asked to appoint depositories for school funds, the official paper for legal publications, and various agents and coordinators. And of course, that PDF is included within the public content.
Can I add a little bit more information
Please
too? So question came up before. Stephanie Pope has submitted her resignation, but is willing to stay through December. So we're actively recruiting, but for right now, we do have her name on there. And then once we do hire someone, then we'll bring that back to update that.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Okay, what are the wishes of the board?
I move to approve the appointments for the 2023-2024 year as submitted.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We are on to item 7C, resolution for the 23-3 home rule for 2023-24. So, did you have something?
Unless you would like to explain.
Dr. Harder, please take this one.
So I feel like I know more about this now. So the home rule resolution allows boards to make local decisions for anything not forbidden by statute. So typically KSB provides great guidance with our policies, and so we follow those and adopt those policies. But if there would be something that would come up that would fit our local community, the board does have, if this is passed, the board does have the right as long as it stays within the statutes.
So I'm going to move to approve that Resolution 2023X Home Rule for 2023 to 2024 is submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We are on to item 7D, Resolution 2023-4, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles Waiver. Dr. Harder.
And this again is pretty straightforward. Our auditor recommends that we do not, that we do not use GAAP.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I motion to approve the resolution 2023-4, generally accepted accounting principles waiver for 2023-2024 as submitted.
Can I ask a question? Why would our auditor recommend that we not use
It's
GAAP?
because schools use a completely different type of accounting than
Okay.
GAAP. And so every year we have to sign that. Yes, sir. Good
Second.
question.
Second.
I almost piped up. I should have earlier. but
That's
yes,
okay.
yeah.
I knew that you were the person to ask that question, so I'm happy you were making the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second.
Motion passes 7-0.
Great, thank you. We are now on to item 8A, future board calendar dates. It looks like we are getting back to our normal twice-a-month schedule. So our next meetings are on July 26th. On August 9th, it is hard to believe that that will be the convocation because I swear the first day of school, the last day of school was just yesterday. And then we have board meetings on August 9th and August 23rd. And August 23rd, we will have our retreat prior to the board meeting. Now we're on to item 9A. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.